Amazing.
Hi.
Hi. Farah, so ever since I've read the first thing about you, I thought, co-founder and CEO of a SexTech, basically, sex wellness startup, and also ex-Goldman Sachs, so investment banker. It sounds like two very male-dominated industries. Is there a pattern here? Did you do this on purpose?
Now that you say that, I have two older brothers, and I think they definitely had an influence on making me a bit tough and probably easier to manage male-dominated environments.
But going back to male-dominated industries, how is it to, as a woman, run a sex tech startup?
It's bloody tough. It's actually a lot more challenging than I thought. Having come from an investment banking background in finance, male-dominated, I thought it would be a walk in the park. The reality is, as a female founder alone, regardless of what industry I'm in, it's very challenging to be taken seriously or even get the right investment. And then when you add in the layer of working in a taboo industry, it just makes it even harder. And there are a number of reasons for that. Sexual health is still seen as taboo. People have different cultural experiences and don't want to talk about it openly, when the reality is it is a health issue and it's something that should be spoken about easily. And I think the other issue is investing in this space is limited because a lot of VCs have LPs that are from generational wealth. So they have vice clauses that say we can't invest in adult or tobacco, etc. And sadly, sexual wellness is classed as adult content.
Wow, I would thought health tech, maybe even close to mental health at some point, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned that investors, look at Hanx differently. How do they look at women coming with that kind of a product? I mean, last year, according to PitchBook data, only 0.9% of VC money went to female-only funded startups. Obviously, it goes up to double digits for mixed teams, but that's not your case, right?
Yeah, it's incredibly disheartening. That's just female founders. Then you think of female founders of color or of diverse background, and then you think of people who are creating brands in taboo areas. So it's been incredibly challenging, but where we have thrived is actually through our community. So our customers are our community, and they've been interacting with the brand early on. We've got them involved in the journey. And as a result of that, a lot of our investors are actually our customers. They're people that have come to us and have said, are you taking investment? Would you do a crowd cube? And so where we haven't gone down a traditional investment route, it's worked out quite well for us because our investors are our customers, but they're also our micro-influencers. It's the word of mouth, and they go and talk about the brand and spread the Hanx love.
Yeah, actually, as a branding person for many years, when I checked your community, I was overwhelmed. You do it absolutely incredibly well. Yeah, I can totally see myself thinking, okay, I'm going to invest as an investor, but let's be honest, I don't think I'm a typical investor in general, right? As a woman. So do you have any stories, maybe, how it was received by more typical investors when you pitched?
You may have seen an article that came out last week.
Yes, we did.
So I've pitched hundreds of times, possibly even over 1,000, I'd say, over the last 5 years of building Hanx. And we've had a range of experiences. Very early on when we thought of the idea, it was still relatively unheard of, particularly in the UK and across Europe. No one else was tackling pleasure in that way. So we'd get all sorts of responses like, you're two little girls, me and my co-founder. What do you know? It's a man's job to buy condoms. Why do you think women will? It's a male-dominated environment, all the way to someone asking me to demonstrate how to put on a condom in a room full of men. So I've had some pretty challenging experiences when pitching. However, I think that has changed over time. You know, that was pretty early on. I think the last few years we've definitely seen an increase in acceptance of talking about taboo topics. And thankfully, there are people like myself who come out and talk about these things that enables change and to let the investment community know that that's not acceptable. You can't talk like that. And hopefully there's more support for female founders in that capacity so that they don't have to go through uncomfortable experiences like that.
So if this journey was pretty challenging for you when it comes to fundraising, what was the choice? Because you didn't give up.
Yeah, giving up is not an option, especially because, you know, I come from a Bangladeshi Muslim background, so to tell my family I was going to leave investment banking to invest my life savings into condoms was quite an alternative route. And so I can't really fail. And my co-founder Sarah is the same. You know, it's not an option. And I think it's not that it's not an option alone, it's also we have so many customers that come forward, our early adopters who've said, thank you so much, you've changed my life, your products are so natural, I haven't had thrush in a number of months, or your lubricant saved my pregnancy. These are things that our customers are willing to tell us. And I think whenever we get this, we realize we're doing something right. We're changing women's health, we're changing the narrative, and we're getting more and more people to open up to what should be a very real and relatable situation.
And you don't do it alone, right? You do have partner in crime.
I do, Dr. Sarah Welsh, who is a very good friend of mine. We actually grew up together. We went to school together, and we couldn't keep away from each other. So we went to university together. We've lived together. Sarah studied medicine and went on to become a gynecology doctor, specializing in sexual health. So she is my partner in crime, my work wife, my confidant and everything in between, and I could not do it without her.
There was a lot of talks about partners and working together and partnerships in and outside of the startup world, so I bet it's definitely easier to go through this challenging times together. But you mentioned community, and you know, there are certain times when, you know, it's not ideal, and it would be great to have something to keep you going. What is it that keeps you going, Farah?
So we have an incredible team. So we're a tiny team of 6, and we have an amazing team, including Emily, who's here, who everyone is so invested and is passionate about what we're trying to do and how we're trying to change women's health, and I think that definitely keeps me going. But there is something particular which Emily introduced. So we use Slack, and there is a channel that Emily has labeled as Bad Day. And so whenever we get a nice comment from a customer or feedback or any sort of press, we pop it on there. And that truly keeps me going. If I'm ever having a low day, or I've had a number of no's at an investment pitch, or a retailer partnership hasn't worked out, whatever that might be, all I have to do is go into the Bad Day channel, scroll through and remind myself why we're doing what we're doing.
That's amazing. I think every company should have that. Definitely would help. You mentioned that, you know, failure is not an option, quitting is not an option. So what drives you?
I think my mother definitely drives me. She is a huge force of nature. You know, she came to the UK in the 70s, could barely speak a word of English in a small Western town. And to go from not speaking English to raising 5 children, you know, I come from a family of entrepreneurs. All my siblings are entrepreneurs. I'm the youngest of 5. And to have done all of that whilst facing challenges, such as having multiple jobs to keep us alive and going, to facing issues within her community. So, you know, she was the first woman within the Asian community to get a job and wear trousers and ride a bike and send my older sister to a university outside of her hometown, which sounds really normal, but in the 70s, in an Asian community, it's really frowned upon. So she definitely went against the grain. I think that's probably where I get a little bit of my feminism drive and resilience. So for sure, she's a key influence for me and a role model.
Sounds amazing. And I think that having those inspiring women in your life definitely helps. Farah, there are many topics that we could pick, obviously. But I wanted to understand a little bit about Hanx when it comes to, sexual wellness is such a wide topic, right? But the first time I looked at Hanx, I thought, wow, there's so much potential when it comes to community to basically cover the lifetime of a woman's health.
Yeah.
Have you, what are the dreams that you have, for Hanx? Is any of this, in the cards?
I think you're a mind reader or a psychic. So when we thought of the idea, we were sick and tired of these products that were garishly packaged, promoting a man's conquest, baffled by the choice. This was condoms. So we wanted to shake things up, but before we actually put our life savings into condoms, we had to find out that there was a market. So we surveyed 2,000 women to find out what they wanted in a product, and the output was Hanx. Vegan, kind to the body, kind to the planet, a brand that's real and relatable. Now, those first 2,000 people were our customer base as well. And they were the people who have been involved in our journey all the way from the condom to the lubricants and elsewhere. So our community is super important to us, and beyond products, we want to offer choice and content. So we offer, we have a blog site, and we also have a chat room where people can talk about anything from fertility, life, relationships. Now, the reality is, in speaking to these customers, we realized there was a whole host of issues within women's health, not just within condoms or sexual wellness. And harnessing Sarah's experience as a gynecology doctor who's also delivered babies, what really excites us and what we're passionate and excited to be doing over time through building trust and authority is actually connecting the milestones of women's health. So not just about having sex. We want to connect the milestones all the way from your first period to your first time having sex, your first child, menopause and beyond. And we don't feel like there is a brand out there doing that. And with our trust and authority and the fact that our brand is quite real and relatable, we hope that we can harness that community regardless of your age.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I totally agree on the segmentation of the market right now. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there are startups that tackle certain segments, but no one really goes after, basically, women of all ages. And your community approach seems like a perfect solution for this. Do I got it right that you were bootstrapping your company?
Yeah,
this is actually what VC started telling every startup around third quarter of 2022. Just now you should be very resilient, almost like a bootstrap company. So you're already there, right?
Yeah.
How did you get there?
So Sarah and I actually, because we couldn't get investment initially because people didn't believe in the idea or it was too crazy at the time, we actually put our savings. So what we would have spent on, say, a deposit for a house or some kind of life moment, we put that into Hanx. And so we bootstrapped initially to get the product to market. And then we went back to invest and said, look, we actually have this physical product now. I mean, don't get me wrong, at every stage you have these hurdles. They say, okay, well, fine, get into retailers and then or show me online, etc. But bootstrapping definitely helped us because it conditioned us to work in a really lean environment. We didn't have the budget to spend on lots of marketing. So we had to think of innovative and guerrilla ways to get the brand out there. And again, that's why our community is so important, because in the absence of cash and a big marketing budget, our community were the ones that went out there and told their friends, and it was very much word of mouth. Now, since we bootstrapped and we were able to reach these milestones, we have been able to get investment, admittedly just angel investment, but that's served us really well, because now we're seeing in the investment landscape, a lot of VCs are saying you need to have at least 12 months runway. They're going to pause on capital, and it's like, well, we've spent the last 4.5 years on a shoestring budget, so we know where to spend our dollars and what is going to convert and give us a great rate of sale versus splashing the cash. So I think whilst it's been a difficult investment landscape for us, we've learned so much along the way and it's served us quite well.
what are the plans when it comes to community and international growth? Because right now you're in the UK and anywhere else?
So we're in the UK and we sell in some European retailers, but I'm really pleased to say that we got FDA approval last year and we launched in the US in December, online only. So we sell our condoms and our lubricants, and soon we'll be developing that proposition. The US is really exciting for us because without spending any money there, we had over 10,000 email subscribers from the US and retail interest from the US. So there were some organic indicators for us to go out there. And so we're really excited about that space.
I've read that you actually did quite a lot of research before getting to the US, right? To the US markets.
We did a fair bit of research. Can you elaborate? Was there a report you see?
No, I mean, I guess as an investor, we tend to ask questions, do our diligence. When I read about your approach to scaling to the US, you basically did this due diligence for investors. You checked all the competitors very thoroughly. Yeah. So that's another thing that very often when investors are talking to founders, if someone says that there's no one like me, no one like us, we would just assume that you don't know who's out there. I mean, there are certain situations that maybe you are really disrupting the whole industry, but here I would say that it was at least worth checking. And you checked a lot, right?
Yeah, you've definitely done your research on Hanx. Yeah, I mean, look, everyone's trying to grow and build business. Like, the sexual wellness space is growing, and I think it's really important that there are other startups out there. We can all coexist and be in this environment. There's enough space for us, right? Because at the minute, there's a couple of major brands, such as Durex, who take a big portion of the market. So there's absolutely space for more startups. I think the thing we had to ask ourselves is this a commercially valuable proposition? Are we going to the US for the sake of going to the US because investors will like it, or are we going because we can truly translate that into sales? And so we did a lot of research. We looked at who else was out there. We also looked at who organically visits our site and what else they interact with. And the reality is there is space for more than a couple of other startups in the US, and everyone has different strategies. For us, we started in retail, and investors don't like retail initially because, you don't have the control. You should be direct to consumer. You should be subscription. The reality is retail solidified our brand because by sitting on shelf next to the big players, we were able to instill a level of trust and authority that you can't build straight away with direct to consumer, especially with a product like, condoms, where you need to know that it's going to work and that it's reliable. And I think, being in sexual wellness too, we're at the mercy of big corporates. We had a big payment provider cancel our contract day 2 of us launching because we're seen as adult. Meta ban loads of our ads. Our adverts online, about out of 10 ads that go live, that go out, only 2 go live, so 8 get banned and appealed because we're classed as adult. So you can't rely on traditional methods such as D2C. And so by building the retail presence in the UK, we had such a good reputation for the US, and we thought there's not many challenger brands that are going into the US in retail like we've been able to do, and we've been able to prove out that omnichannel model. So yeah, we did our research, and we think that there's space for us to exist there.
And you touched a little bit on the topic of taboo and stigma. Do you see this still as a problem? Is there a taboo around those topics?
Yeah, I think there are. I think there is a change, and I think people are more accepting of talking about this, but there are a lot of cultural barriers, and it depends where you go. And I think we need more brands like ourselves and more investors like yourself to talk about these challenges so that people are aware, because there's a lot of unconscious bias as well, right? If you think a lot of investors tend to be men, may not understand that this is actually a woman's health issue or understand how they feel purchasing and carrying such products. And actually, the investors who've come into our company who are men are those who either have daughters or a female influence and want to make a change. So I think change is happening. It's a little bit slow. It's different to what it was in 2018, but there's still more we can do.
And on the content side, is this just like, how does content for Hanx look like?
Honestly, content is like a product to us, right? So we have all these physical products that we sell, but not everyone is going to need condoms all the time. Not everyone is going to need, the contraceptive pill that we offer or libido products. So content is something that people can rely on for education, for advocacy, to ask the community as well. So it's something we continuously churn out on purpose, and it's not just on sex. We've got fertility, relationships, life, health issues, everything. So I think it's definitely an important strand of our business, and mainly to educate and serve the community.
And how you decide on the content? Is it coming from, your head of brand or head of content, or is it coming more from the community?
I think it's a combination. So I think there's definitely themes and strands that we pull and pick on, and Emily and the marketing team have a content plan in place for the year that we review, and we review monthly. But we can also be reactive because we're quick, we're nimble. So if there's a report on the BBC that says STI rates are going up, it's a great opportunity for us to react on that and create a piece of content around STIs or a particular area. So I think it's about being flexible, and that's what's helped guide us in our content strategy.
Amazing. I think I'm going to become your investor.
Yes.
But if there are any investors out here, I would definitely encourage you to talk to Farah. We already had a pretty amazing discussion prior to this panel, and she knows her data. Like, she really does. Farah, so we still have just a couple of minutes, and I wanted to ask you, obviously, we don't want to be, as women, seen only as an inspiration, right? But do you have any wise thoughts to aspiring female founders?
Yeah, I think not just female founders, but generally anyone that is doubting themselves. A few things that we've learned, that I've learned along the way. One, go with your gut. It's got your best interest at heart, and the older I get, the more I realize how important it is to follow and trust your gut. Two, take a calculated risk. So if you have a great idea and you want to launch that, really understand what else is in the market, a little bit like the research and the data you were saying. Understand who else is out there and what true USP you are offering, and be really honest with yourself. Even if you think it's incredible, you need to ask at least 100 other people about whether it truly is something. Ignore haters. If you truly believe in your proposition and you're serving something different, there are going to be people who don't believe it or, don't think you can succeed. You know yourself better than anyone else, so try to block out the negativity. And I think the final thing is, be patient. I'm very impatient. I think things should have been done yesterday, and the reality is there are certain parts of the business that will take time, and you just need to trust the process. So hopefully there were enough pointers.
Yeah, there was a lot, and all of them were very, very relevant. Thank you for that. I think that we can take some questions from the audience, if there are any. Not really.
Well, don't be shy. If you see either of us later on, please feel free to approach us and ask any questions.
Yeah, no questions. Okay, I will ask my questions then. When you look at Hanx now and 10 years from now, in the ideal situation, how does it look?
It's a very bold question.
I'm bold.
I think what we're doing is really exciting. The fact that we're able to translate to teenagers all the way to women in their 40s plus is quite a challenging thing to grapple in terms of tone of voice, but we seem to do really well. Where I see Hanx is a household name whereby women, regardless of age, are able to recommend and come to us. So if your teenage daughter is on her first period, or you need sex education content for your child, or you're struggling with menopause and you need help with side effects, I really hope that Hanx can be that household name that you can come to. And the sort of attitude we see it as is a little bit like your best friend's big sister. You know, when you were growing up and there was always that cool big sister that knew things and knew the answers. We want to be that sort of brand that is real and relatable. We don't want to gloss over the realities of being a woman in the modern day, regardless of what stage you're at. So I hope that's where we're at in 10 years. I hope we're getting there already.
Thank you so much. And this older sister, it's not everyone has someone like that. But yeah, that's what I mentioned at the beginning about mental health. We do need that support. Yeah. And we do need communities. So thank you so much, Farah, for not giving up. And yeah, please keep it going. And in 10 years, we'll know about Hanx, because everyone would know about Hanx. But you've probably heard about it first. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.